Okay, we're going live. Actually, let me do this. So I'm just posting this, so we now have it on YouTube. For those who want to watch, you can also watch it afterwards. Today's class is entitled "The Kaballa of the Haggada." Let me get this straight. The Kaballa of the Haggada. Okay, no, there's more cold ones in the fridge. Here. If anybody did not get anything to eat, there's more food now. So welcome everyone. Thank you. First of all, thank you to those who were here last week. Welcome back, and thank you to those who are here now. We're going to talk about today's class, which is titled The Kaballa of the Haggada. The Haggada is one of the most least understood books that everyone uses. It's a book that everyone uses, but yet most people don't understand what they're reading. Most people can't pull it. Most people don't really put together what's going on. It seems like a bunch of words about mumble jumble. Obviously, we know the basics. There's 4 questions, and there's we were slaves in Egypt, and what else is in there? And there's a bunch of words there. So today we're going to try and make some sense of it, and we're also going to bring in some deeper insights into some aspects of the Haggada. As I explained last week, for those who weren't here, I explained that the first public book that the Rebbe wrote, that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote, was a commentary on the Haggada. And this is going back to the first time it was published in the 50s, and it was a book that he wrote as a commentary on the Haggada. And you could say, what's their commentary on the Haggada? Well, the Haggada is actually there's hundreds and hundreds of books that are written on the Haggada, explaining where it is and where it comes from. And of course, Haggada, Passover, of course, is the most celebrated Jewish holiday, Jewish festival, and it's of course a very significant holiday. Okay, we have a few more books here. If you want to pass them down. So, the Seder, what is the Seder? It's called the Seder. If there's an event that is the most disorganized and disarray event that we have an entire year, it would probably be the Seder. Right, Mommy, I spilled my wine, and the matzah is too hard, and the charosas is spilling, and the Seder plate just toppled over, and everything that could go wrong is going wrong at the Seder. And yet it's called a Seder. And of course it's called a Seder because there is a Seder. There's 15 steps, which is in order. But it's also about a Seder, about making a Seder, which means an order, making an order in our lives. To try and figure out what's happening in life. And
I would say it's kind of ironic that you mentioned disorganized. The Seder is disorganized. Well, the Seder means order.
Say exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. So Seder means order, but yet it seems to be the most disorganized event. Anyway, 1 second. So last week we talked at length about some of the steps of the Seder, and we'll go through them briefly. If you turn to page 25, and we also talked last week at length about the things that are found on the Seder plate. Yeah, when you're done eating, and put away the bagel, and then you have more of this. Okay. So let's just go through what the steps of the Seder are, and then today I want to primarily focus on the 5th step, which is called Magid, which is actually, Magid is the story of the Haggada. So just briefly, because as I said, I already talked about this last week, and you can go and hear at length. Kaddish is we make Kiddush, just like a regular holiday, just like a regular Shabbos, we make Kiddush. However, as we pointed out last week, the Kiddush on Passover is considered one of the 4 cups of wine. And therefore, there's a number of things that are affected due to the fact of it being the first of the 4 cups of wine. Number 1, it has to be drank after nightfall. Number 2, you have to drink it. Everyone has to drink, as opposed to Kiddush, where one person drinks and that's really all you need. One person makes Kiddush and drinks on behalf of the congregation. On Passover, everyone has to drink because everyone's obligated in the 4 cups of wine. Urchatz, you wash our hands, and then karpas, we take a vegetable. Karpas means a vegetable that we dip into salt water. This is primarily so the children should ask. We do things by the Seder that the children should ask. And the reason is because the Torah tells us specifically with regards to Passover, although it's relevant to all parts of Judaism, but specifically with regards to Passover, the Torah tells us about the children asking, when your child asks. And we're soon going to see about the different types of sons that are mentioned in the Torah. But let's continue on. Yachatz, you break the middle matzah. As we pointed out, the purpose for breaking the middle matzah is, most people say it's because we need an afikoman, because you need to hide the afikoman. No, that's not the reason. You get an afikoman out of it too, but that's not the primary reason. The primary reason that we're breaking the matzah is because the Haggada has to be said over lechem oni, over poor bread. And you want to say the Haggada when there is a poor bread on the table, and one of the ways of making that poor bread is by having a broken matzah on the table. Then is Magid, and Magid is the story of the Haggada. And that's going to be primarily our focus today, the story of the Haggada of Magid. Rachza, you wash your hands. Motzi matzah, just like you would before matzah. Motzi matzah, you make hamotzi, and then the blessing on matzah. The matzah is the hamotzi for the night, so that's that. Moror, we eat bitter herbs, and that is to remember the slavery in Egypt. Korech, we make a sandwich which is with both the matzah and the moror. This is because, according to some opinions, the mitzvah to eat the moror and the matzah is to eat it as one sandwich. Now, back in the day, that was done together with the Pesach sacrifice, which obviously we don't have today. But because there was a mitzvah to eat it as a sandwich together, so that's why they ate it. Now, you can ask how they did it with the matzah that we have. That's another discussion. Perhaps their matzahs were a little bit different, maybe a little bit softer than what we have today. But anyway, Shulchan Aruch is a festive meal, just like any holiday. We have a festive meal. Tzofan is eating the afikoman, that represents the Pesach lamb, which we don't have, but we eat more matzah to represent the Pesach lamb, and that's why it's eaten after the meal as the dessert, because the Pesach had to be eaten when you were full after the meal. Beirach, you make the benching, just like every meal, we make a grace after meal, so we do that on Pesach as well. Hallel, we recite Hallel, which is thanksgiving, praises to God, and Nirtza, saying that the Seder is accepted by God. So essentially, what's really happening in the orders, although there's 15 steps, they're actually really only a few steps, because what's actually happening? Kiddush, we do that every holiday. We're doing that now. We'll do one thing out of the way, which is eating the vegetable. And together with eating the vegetable, we wash our hands, but that's associated with eating the vegetable. Then we tell the story of the Haggada, so that obviously takes up a lot of time. But that's just one step, and then we're eating the matzah and the maror, and then we're going back to our regular meal. That's essentially what the Passover Seder is in a nutshell. But what I want to talk about is really the story of the Haggada, because this is where many people get lost. So turn over here to the story of the Haggada. The first question you can ask about the Haggada is, and it's on page 28. The first question you can ask about the Haggada is, who wrote the Haggada? Because we know, going back to the times of the Talmud, going back to the times of the Mishnah, they were already saying the Haggada. are parts of the Haggadah seem to go back, maybe even back to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Moses, but some of it obviously not, because some of it are more newer stories. So who exactly wrote the Haggadah? And the answer to that question is 3 words: I don't know. And that is because it is a mystery of really who wrote the Haggadah, but there are some speculation, but there is not a clear answer. All that we know is that it goes back, at least we have recorded Haggadic texts at least 2,500 years, but how it actually was compiled the way it is, that's a little bit unclear. And we know that they made a Seder going back to Egypt. There was a mitzvah. When God told them to go out of Egypt, God says, you should have a Pesach lamb with matzah and maror. So we know that that's already, the order, the way we have it today, is a little bit unclear of who wrote the actual liturgy of the Haggadah the way we have it. The first thing we do is, when we tell the story, we begin by saying as follows. Now remember, we just did yachatz, which means we just broke the matzah and we left the smaller piece of matzah on the table. The bigger piece of matzah we put away for the afikoman. That's what we're holding now in the Seder. What's the first thing that we say? You uncover the matzahs partially, and you say, "This is the bread of affliction that our fathers ate in the land of Egypt. Whoever is hungry, let him come and eat. Whoever is in need, let him come and conduct the Seder of Pesach. This year we are here, next year we're in the land of Israel. This year we are slaves, next year we will be free people." What's the problem with this text right here? This is the bread of our affliction, okay, so that's referring to the matzah on the table, okay, that we understand. That our fathers ate in the land of Egypt, okay. Is it actually the bread that our fathers ate in the land of Egypt? Take a look for a second. Turn for a second to page 39. What does it say on page 39? Matzah. This matzah that we eat, for what reason? Because the dough our fathers did not have time to become leavened before the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be, revealed himself to them and redeemed them. Thus it is said, they baked the cake matzahs from dough that they had brought out of Egypt, because they had not leavened. They had been driven out of Egypt and could not delay, and they had also not prepared any other provisions. Did they eat matzah in Egypt, or they did not eat matzah in Egypt? No? Didn't I just say that God commanded them to have a Seder in Egypt?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So did they eat matzah or they didn't eat matzah? They ate matzah.
Well, they had to if they had Seder.
So they did eat matzah. So then why do we say they ate matzah? Because they had to leave Egypt in a hurry. I mean, everyone knows this. Why did they eat matzah? Because, well, the dough didn't have time to rise. Really? God told them you should make a Seder in Egypt. So they had a Seder with matzah. Now, in the simple story, the dough that didn't have time to rise was not the matzah that they ate. That was dough that they were preparing, and it didn't have time to rise, and whatever, baked in the sun, or however you want to translate it. But that's actually not the dough of the matzah that they ate by their Seder. But yet we say later that that's why we eat the matzah. Okay, we'll leave that question. Maybe we'll get to it, maybe we won't. Number 2, we say, whoever is hungry, let him come and eat. Whoever is in need, let him come and conduct the Seder of Pesach. When are we saying this paragraph? When are we saying this paragraph? Smack in the middle of the Seder. Okay, any guests want to come? We're in the middle of our Seder now. We're already halfway through. We already made Kiddush. We already dipped the vegetables in the salt water. Whoever is hungry, come and eat. Does that make sense? We should say that before, right? Another interesting thing is that this paragraph is written in Aramaic, which obviously you wouldn't know that from reading the translation. Then it says like this. This year we're here, next year in the land of Israel. This year we are slaves, next year we'll be free people. Why is that important? Obviously, we have hope to be here next year, but this year we're here, next year in the land of Israel. This year we're slaves, next year we'll be free people. Okay, let's put that aside. And let's go to the next part of the Seder.
Now, what if people are living in the land of Israel?
What if people are living in the land of Israel? Right? That's a good question. If you're living in the land of Israel, do you say that? So I'm going to give a bit of a general explanation, and this will really enlighten everything that we're going to go through during the Seder. And this will help us understand some of what we're going to read through when it comes to the Haggada. When we're sitting by the Seder, on Seder night, there's a problem. There's a question that arises, which is Genug Shain, right? They say in Yiddish, Genug Shain, enough already. You have someone sitting in today we're in America. You have someone sitting in a gulag in Russia or in a concentration camp. And they say, we're supposed to feel that we're free. How do you feel that you're free? By Seder. We do expressions of freedom. We lean to our left, which is supposed to express freedom, as I explained last week, that the older version of leaning is what was a little bit more expressive of freedom. But regardless, we do things of freedom. And in general, what is the difference between what we do on this night of Pesach and any other night? So I'm going to ask another two questions before I get to this. The next question that I want to ask is, why don't we recite a blessing over the Haggada? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mikra Haggada, to read the Haggada. It's a mitzvah to tell the story, right? It's a mitzvah, it's a command. One of the mitzvahs, on the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, is to tell the story of Egypt. It's to tell the story of Passover. So we should say, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mikra Haggada, like we tell the story of the Megillah, right? Say a blessing before we read the Megillah. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mikra Megillah. Should say a blessing al mikra Haggada, or al mikra Yetziat Mitzrayim, reading the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Question number 2. We say every day, there are 6 remembrances that we're supposed to remember every day. One of them is to remember that we left Egypt, like we say in the Shema. In the Shema, we say we remember the leaving of Egypt every day, Yetziat Mitzrayim. And it's a mitzvah to remember the exodus of Egypt every day. So what is different on the night of Passover?
So that they weren't transported, you're experiencing that first.
Very good. So you're touching upon where I want to go here. First, I want to answer the first question. Why do we not recite a mitzvah? Why do we not recite a blessing on the mitzvah? So there's a few answers that are given. I'm going to tell you a few of the answers, and some of these answers is what the Rebbe brings down as commentary to the Haggada. Answer number 1 is that we already did make a blessing for the exodus of Egypt. When do we make a blessing for the exodus of Egypt? When we do Kiddush, what do we say in Kiddush? Et Yom Chag HaMatzos Hazeh Zman Cheirutzeinu Mikra Kodesh Zecher Liyetzias Mitzrayim. What is Zecher Liyetzias Mitzrayim? Right, everybody knows the Kiddush. We say it every Shabbos. Zecher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim Kivanu V'Charta. What does Zecher L'Yitzias Mitzrayim mean? Remembering our exodus from Egypt. So in the Kiddush we mention. Here, sorry, I'll tell you in the if you want to turn back to is there a translation of the Kiddush? No, they don't actually translate Kiddush in here. So never mind. Oh, they do. Page 27. Page 27 in the translation of the Kiddush. On the top of the page where it says the season of our freedom. You see where it says the season of our freedom on top of the page? This is a translation of the Kiddush. The season of our freedom, a holy convocation commemorating the departure of Egypt. So we mentioned, so again, it's on the top of the page 27 on the right side. The season of freedom, a holy convocation commemorating the departure from Egypt. So we see that the departure from Egypt is mentioned in the Kiddush. So it is a blessing that's said. Another answer is that there's no specific amount in how much you have to commemorate the Exodus of Egypt. So since there's no specific amount, so therefore you can't really make a blessing on it. So in the Haggada, the Rebbe tells a story about how his grandfather asked his father, the fifth Chabad Rebbe asked his father, who was the Rebbe before him, why don't we make a blessing? And he asked his father before him, why didn't he make a blessing? This goes back all the way, and he said, because similar to why we don't make a blessing on benching, on grace after meals. We don't make a blessing on a blessing. So the remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim, remembering the Exodus of Egypt is a blessing, so we don't make a blessing on a blessing. So that's another reason that's given. So getting back to the point is, what is the difference between reciting the Exodus of Egypt today and the Exodus of Egypt any time throughout the year? And so the answer is, as you pointed out before, that on the night of Passover, we're not only commemorating a story that happened. It's not only we're remembering something that happened. Rather, we are reliving the story of the Exodus of Egypt. You have to relive the story of the Exodus of Egypt. And in order to relive the story, you have to experience it. Now, we're not going to go back to Egypt and lock ourselves up to experience it. But we do things that help us experience the slavery, and we do things that help us experience the freedom. What are the things that we do that help us experience the slavery? So, for example, by dipping the vegetable in salt water. Salt water represents the tears. I'm just going to ask you, please don't get the comments on the Haggada. Just tell me not to. Jackie, just tell him to keep the Haggada away from the chametz. So another thing that we do, for example, is we eat maror. We eat bitter herbs together with the matzah. We eat, for example, charosas. What's charosas? Charosas is to remember the bricks and mortar that they needed to build the Egypt and the slavery in Egypt. So there's many things. Then we do also things that are aspects of freedom. 4 cups of wine. Wine represents freedom. We lean, that represents freedom. Matzah represents freedom. How does matzah represent freedom? Because, as we said, when they left Egypt, they had matzah on their backs. Did they eat matzah while they were in Egypt as well? Yes. But that was a slavery matzah. That was one type of matzah. There's also a freedom matzah. And our matzah today is a freedom matzah. Now I'm going to throw in a little Kaballa for you, because this, after all, is the Kaballa of the Haggada. So in Kabbalah, there is different aspects, different levels of God's revelation to us as a people. And in God's revelation to us, there is what we call the pre-Exodus revelation and the post-Exodus revelation. God revealed himself to the Jewish people while they were still in Egypt. It was the night of Passover. God said, you shall take for yourself a lamb, bring the lamb, you shall put the blood on the doorposts, and upasach Hashem, and God is going to, how do you translate it? God is going to pass over. Now the word Pesach is actually referring to the lamb, the Passover lamb. But it also refers to Pasach, which means God is going to pass over. So that's a very well translated English word, unusual to translate it properly in English. Passover, Pesach, because God was protecting the Jewish homes that they should not be smitten by the plague of the firstborn. And then what happened? God said, on that night I want you to make a Seder. The Seder is with the Pesach lamb, the matzah, and the maror. You make that and be ready to go. But that revelation, that godly revelation, was one that was still a slavery revelation of God. We want to eat the matzah. That is how God revealed to them, not only during the time they were in Egypt, but also at the time of their exodus, where it says that when they went out of Egypt, and it says even a maidservant was able to see miracles that even the greatest prophets were not able to see then. And that's what we see on the eve of Passover. These tremendous miracles associated with God revealing himself at the exodus of Egypt. Which is why, even though when the matzah that we talk about, when did they actually leave Egypt? Anybody knows? Well, it was after midnight, because the firstborn plague happened at midnight. So it was after midnight. So it was in the early hours of the morning when Pharaoh started running around and saying, enough, go, get out. Pharaoh drove them out, get out of here, go. And that's when they took the matzah, the dough that we talk about, they took it on their backs and they took it with them, leaving Egypt. So that's what we call a post-midnight matzah. But there was also a pre-midnight matzah. The pre-midnight matzah is what they ate in Egypt. And so we are trying to experience both aspects of matzah on the night of the Seder. We want to experience the slavery matzah, and we also want to experience the freedom matzah. Now, when do we do our Seder? Do we do our Seder after midnight? No. Well, for some do, right? but actually, at least the first night, you're supposed to eat the afikoman before midnight. Now midnight here. Okay. Now midnight here, in halachic terms, is roughly around, nowadays it's roughly around 1:20 in the morning, is what we consider halachic midnight. So it means that you have to finish all the matzah by then, or at least try to. Why? Because what we want to do is we want to say nowadays we're experiencing Passover, but we want to experience Passover in the way where we're having the aspect of freedom, even though we are still somewhat in Galus, we're still somewhat in exile. And this is why you could say throughout exile for 2,500 years, 2,000 years that we don't have a temple, we've been away from our home. And we say, is this freedom? Even in America today, there's people saying, is this freedom? And The answer is, well, yes and no. It is freedom, but it's not the freedom that we want. It's not the freedom that we really want to experience. The true freedom is when we're in our homeland and there's no missiles from Iran falling on our homeland, and it's safe and secure, and we have a temple built. Although some of our enemies, some of the anti-Semites out there are already saying it for us. We don't even have to say it. The Jews want the temple built. Yeah, we do. We want the temple built. Okay, you're happy now? We want the temple built, the third temple. And to truly experience what it means to be free for a Jew. So how could it be that a Jew in a gulag or in a concentration camp or throughout anywhere, any time in history, living far away from their land, could experience freedom? So the answer is yes and no. Now let's read over this paragraph again. The bottom, page 28. This is the bread of affliction that our fathers ate in the land of Egypt. Whoever is hungry, let him come in and eat. Whoever is in need, let him come in and conduct the Seder of Pesach. We're not inviting guests from the outside to come in. We're inviting ourselves. We're inviting everyone here, everyone sitting by the Seder. This is your time to come and experience what Passover is about. This is your moment to feel what Passover is about. And we say, you know what's going to happen at this Seder? This year, we're here. Next year in the land of Israel. This year, slaves. Next year, free people. We understand that we're not living in a perfect world. We understand we're not living a perfect Passover the way it should be. This year, we're here. But we will be free. And we have to have a hope to be free, to be fully free. And so now we have this introduction to what this Haggada is all about. All right, so we just spent the first 35 minutes with the introduction of the Haggada. And that's one paragraph, which is the introduction to the Haggada. Does that make sense? Yes. Any questions? So this is the Hey Lach Ma'anya, this is the bread of affliction. And how do we begin? How do we open up the story of Passover? The Magid, the story of Passover, we open it up by saying, this, Hey Lach Ma'anya, this is the bread of affliction. You see this bread sitting right here on the table? This matzah, and make even shmura matzah that people hate to eat. I would rather be eating bread, but now I'm going to eat matzah. Why? Because tonight is different. This is a different night. This is Passover. Passover has certain experiences that we don't have throughout the year. This is the matzah. And we're going to talk about the matzah where God revealed himself to the Jewish people in such a way that we hope and pray to see those miracles again.
What's the significance? I think that part is in Aramaic, is it? Allah.
Yeah.
And what's the significance? That was the vernacular at the time.
Oh, you're saying the term halachmanya?
Yeah, well, the word.
Aramaic. Yes. So right. Yeah, very good. So that's why this paragraph was in Aramaic, because it was specifically meant to be in language that people understood. Yeah. So that was the vernacular at the time. That was the language that they understood at the time. Once we get through with that introduction, we then go to what's really essentially the first part of the Haggada. What's the first part of Haggada? The Manashtana. Why is the Manashtana the first part of Haggada? Because the Haggada has to be done in a way of question and answer. Why does it have to be done in a way of question and answer? Because the Torah tells us that your child is going to ask you, and this is what you shall answer him. And so the Torah is telling us that he's locked inside. Okay, all right. And so the Torah is telling us that on the night of Passover it should be in a way of question and answer, which is why we do things that are different. We do things that are strange. We do things that are unusual. That's why we also try and get to hide away the afikoman, that the children should be involved. The children should ask. You're also supposed to try and start the Seder early so that the kids are still awake. The children should be involved. Judaism does not shy away from questions. The very first thing, as soon as we left Egypt, God said, your children are going to ask you, have an answer for them. Don't say, because this is what we do, because this is what my mom and dad did, because this is our tradition. That's not an answer. Your child's going to ask you a question. Why are we doing this? Be ready to have an answer. You're a parent, you're an adult, you're expected to answer a child. Because a child's asking out of sincerity, a child's asking out of authenticity, and usually those questions don't come when we most expect them. Usually they come when we least expect them. And the child sees and hears things that we probably wish they didn't see, but that's the reality. And the night of Passover, we want them to see that we're doing things different, and we want them to ask. What are the 4 questions? Now we're going to say, well, I already know the 4 questions. Well, do you? Okay. What makes this night different from all other nights? Page 29. So the first thing, actually, let's go for a second before that. The second cup is now poured. The child asks, what makes this night different? So you're actually supposed to move away the matzahs, because anytime you're giving honor to bread, anytime you give honor to wine, we move away bread. Just like every Shabbos, when we make Kiddush, we cover the challah, because when we give honor to wine, we cover the challah. The same thing, anytime we're giving honor to wine, we cover or we move aside the matzah. So that's why you're supposed to cover the matzahs, and now we're filling the second cup. When do we have the first cup? When do we have the first cup?
Right at the beginning.
By Kiddush. The Kiddush is the first cup. This is now the second cup. We fill it up. Why? Because we want the Haggada to be recited over wine and matzah. We want everything to be included here. So we fill up the second cup. We're not going to drink it for a while. This is also the kid should ask, wait, why are we filling up another cup now? We're not going to drink it for a while. Okay. Why is this night different from all other nights? On all nights, we need not dip even once. On this night, we dip twice. Wait, is that the first question? Shebechol halilos anu achlim chametz o matzah. On all nights we eat chametz or matzah. On this night only matzah. On all nights we eat all kinds of vegetables. On this night mar. On nights we eat sitting upright and reclining. On this night we all recline. Most people know the second question, and many of the Ashkenazi communities, the first question that they ask is about chametz and matzah. You notice this Haggada is a little bit different. So they say Chabad has to do everything different. Yeah, you say Chabad always have to do things different. Well, the truth of the matter is that this order, I'm just going to quote you from the Rebbe's Haggada in his commentary. This order we found in the Mishnah and Yerushalmi, Rif, Rush, Rambam, Tur, Abu Draham, Zevach, Pesach, Mari, Abarbanel, Priyatz Chadash, Arizal, Gad Rishina, Agor Sabach, Rif. 15 sources quoted right here that this is the right order of the reading. The most known one is the Rambam. So the question is not so much on Chabad, maybe the question is on others. But the truth is the other order is found in the Talmud. So there's a question of what comes first. Now, you could ask a question like this. What is the most important thing on the list here? Of everything that we read, what's the most important thing of these 4?
Question 1.
Question 1, why?
Because it's making you think about why you're there.
Okay.
That's the question.
Okay. So that's a question that's there to ask, that the children should ask, right? Okay. Very good. So that actually tells us somewhat about the importance of the night. But when you talk about like significance as far as like what is the most important mitzvah to do, right? Then it would be eating matzah would be number 1. That's a biblical command to eat matzah. Eating the maror is a rabbinical command. Nowadays, it's a rabbinical command, eating the maror. So, and then eating and reclining. There are a few questions that are not here. You could ask why those questions are not here. Well, one question is clearly brought in the Rambam, which is on all other nights. On all other nights, we don't. On this night, we eat the Pesach lamb. So obviously, we're not going to say that one. Which is here. There's another one here. There's a Pesach lamb which is roasted. On this night, we don't eat roasted lamb. Anyway, I'm just going to share a thought on this, which is that, as you pointed out, that the first question is, another simple reason why is because it goes in order of the Haggada, what we actually do. Because what's the first thing that we do on the list? We actually dip, that's the first thing that we do. Because the karpas, the vegetables, is the first thing you do right after Kiddush. And then the matzah comes after that, and then the vegetables comes after that. The problem is that if you want to go in order of what we do, actually the first thing that we do is leaning. Because the first time that we lean is by our first cup of Kiddush. So that would actually be the first thing that we do, right? So it's not really in order.
So that's the disorder organized.
But the Rebbe points out a beautiful idea, and he says that this actually teaches us the importance of Jewish customs and Jewish traditions. That there are certain things that we do that are law that you have to do. It's an obligation. Eating matzah is an obligation on the night. It's not if I want to eat matzah, if not. It's an obligation to eat at least a kizayis, the matzah, which is roughly about a half a matzah, half a shmur matzah, roughly, at least at a minimum. That's an obligation. Eating maror is an obligation, at least rabbinically, an obligation. Leaning is also an obligation rabbinically. But then there are certain things that are traditions, customs, and we have to see the importance of that. And especially when it comes Pesach, how many people have customs and traditions with Pesach, associated with Pesach? My mother made the best gefilte fish. And in our family, we would hide the afikoman, and the whoever found it got a bicycle. Okay, I'm not talking about my family. I'm talking about someone else's family. In my family, by the time we were looking for the afikoman, most kids were sleeping by then. I can tell you, we had a lot of interesting characters by our Seder. A lot of interesting characters. But everyone has their Passover experiences, and so the lesson that we learn from here is the importance of tradition, customs, because dipping into salt water is essentially only a custom, but especially on Passover, it's so important, because we want to get the children involved. We talk about the children, we talk about the next generation, we talk about the future of Am Yisrael, how important it is to think about every custom, every tradition, things that we want to do. And it's so important. So these are the 4 questions. So basically what our sages did was they helped us formulate these questions so that the child doesn't have to do that for us. And then the child asks the questions. Any questions on the questions?
I'm thinking of the Harosis, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I know the way we made it is so totally different than the way Kaballa, like it's made here. Is there a special way or not a special way?
There is, but I will actually refer that to last week's class, which we talked about the making of the charosas. Yeah.
I missed it when you said it, but why is Ashkenazi my Haggada, all different from a Kabbalah Haggada?
Right. So they are following what the Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud. This is following the Jerusalem Talmud as well as all the other ones who quote it this way. So either way is fine, but I just wanted to explain why we follow this way. But if you do the other way, it's fine, as long as we ask the questions. But the main thing is to ask the questions, because this is what the night is. It's about question and answer. Now, what is the answer? The answer essentially is one paragraph. And so then why is the Haggada so long if if we have this one paragraph that's the answer? Page 29. In the middle, the answer to the question, by the way, we reveal the matzah, we put it out again, so that the Haggada should be recited on the matzah. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and God our God took us out from there with a strong hand and with an outstretched arm. If the Holy He had not taken our fathers out of Egypt, then we, our children and children's children, would have remained enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. Even if all of us were wise and all of us were understanding and all of us were knowing the Torah, we would still be obligated to discuss the exodus from Egypt. And everyone who discusses the exodus from Egypt at length is praiseworthy. So the answer, in short, is that we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and God took us out with a strong hand, with an outstretched arm. Want a little Kaballa? Why do we say that if He had not taken us out, then our children and children would still be remain in Egypt? Why? Maybe we could have got out somehow. Maybe eventually there would have been an uprising and we would have got out. So I'm going to give a little bit of a Kabbalah for you. According to Kabbalah, there are 50 levels of impurity. There's also 50 levels of holiness. Being in Egypt, the Jewish people reached the 49th level of unholiness, of impurity. And therefore, God said, if I don't get them out immediately, once they sink to the 50th level, then it comes to a point of no return. And so, in order to not reach that 50th level of impurity, they had to immediately be sent out of Egypt. And that's why Pharaoh essentially threw them out of Egypt. Which is why until they received the Torah at Mount Sinai, how many days did they have to count? 49, right? Because each day they were cleansing themselves from another one of those levels of impurity which they reached in Egypt. And in cleansing themselves, they finally cleansed themselves at the 49th level. Then on the 50th day, which was the giving of the Torah Mount Sinai, they were able to reach that 50th level of holiness, which could only be given by God's revelation at Mount Sinai. So they stooped to the lowest level, the 49th level of impurity, and they now were elevated to the 49th level of holiness and the 50th level, which could only be given by a gift from God at Mount Sinai. That's why after Moshe Rabbeinu Moses, he wanted to get the 50th level of holiness. And God told him it could only be given as a gift from God. So God told him, you should, before he passed away, you should climb up a mountain, and which is where Moses passed. You know what the name of the mountain where Moses passed was? Anyone know? No, close. Har Nibo. What does Nibo stands for? Nun Bo, 50 in it. It was in that point that Moses received the 50th level of holiness that God granted Moses right before he passed away. So that's the idea. But what do we say? That everybody has to talk about the story of the Exodus of Egypt. Why? Because as we said before, tonight is not only about telling a story, but we have to experience it. In order to experience it, we have to know what we're doing, what we're experiencing it. And the more we do, the better we are. What does it say? Everyone has to. Once we say everyone has to, even if you're great sages, it says, even if we're wise and all in understanding and knowing the Torah, we'll still be obligated to discuss the exodus from Egypt. And with that, the author of the Haggada throws in another paragraph, which is, it happened that Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Tarfon were reclining at a Seder in Bnei Brak. They were discussing the exodus from Egypt all that night until the students came and told them, our masters, the time has come for reciting the morning Shema. What's the point of the story? We like to tell stories? Because we just said a moment ago that everyone is obligated, even if you're great sages. So why are we mentioning these individuals? Because each of these individuals here represent a different aspect of Yiddishkeit, a different aspect of Judaism. So, for example, you have Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. They came from very prominent Jewish families. They were from the family of the Nasi. They were from the head of the tribes. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Akiva, he came from converts. And so he shows us that even someone that's a convert has to as well. You also have Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yeshua, who were Kohanim and Leviim. They were Kohanes and Levites. So it tells us them as well. They're also obligated. Rabbi Akiva happened to be the rabbi of Bnei Brak, so that's what it says. It happened in Bnei Brak. Anyway, so we see that all different types of people have to talk about the story. And then what do they say? The students came to them and said, it came time for the morning Shema. Why is that important? Because what is the idea of the Seder? The idea of the Seder is that the children should ask, the parents are answering, and it sounds like it's a way where the parents are telling the children. What we're learning from here is no, the students are actually enlightening the teachers. And when you have a discussion, when you have a conversation, listen to what the children are saying. They're enlightening you as well. That's why we bring the idea that they reciting the morning Shema. What is the morning Shema? What does morning mean? Morning means it's light time, it's daytime. It means we're giving light into the situation. They're inspiring the situation. So when we're hearing the children ask the questions, we're answering them. Don't say, I'm the big smart one giving the answers. What are the students teaching us as well? Hear how the students are bringing light, bringing day to our understanding as well.
Rabbi, I just have a question, but also, I know that states that if you're studying Torah, that supersedes any type of prayer. So I guess the gentleman that the students were saying might have been involved in Torah study.
They didn't say prayer, he said Shema.
Shema.
And Shema, well, okay. Anyway, Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, this is a quote from the Mishnah, page 30. Said Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Hare ani kivem shiv shama. I am like a man of 70 years old, yet I did not succeed in providing the exodus from Egypt. Must be mentioned, succeed in proving that the exodus of Egypt must be mentioned at night. Till ben Zoma explained to me, it said that you remember the day that you left Egypt all the days of your life. Now, days of your life refers to the days, all the days refers to nights. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, by the way, he says, I am like 70 years old. What does it mean I'm like 70 years old? He actually wasn't 70 years old. He was actually, some say he was 18 years old. But he became the leader at a very young age. And he felt young, to be the leader. And so a miracle happened. Some would say this is not a miracle. A miracle happened, and he got a white beard and he looked much older. There's much more to explain about that. But the idea is that he says that the reciting the Exodus of Egypt is from by nighttime as well. Okay, I'm going to move a little bit. I know we're out of time. We're not out of time, but we're running low on time. I want to go to the next paragraph because this one is important. Blessed is the omnipresent, blessed be he, blessed who gave the Torah to his people Israel, blessed be he. The Torah speaks of 4 children, one who is wise, one who is wicked, one who is simple, and one who does not know how to ask. Now everyone remembers hearing the 4 sons, the 4 children. So, but why is this even here? Like, what is this all about? So to understand, we have to understand the Torah mentions that when the guide to Levincha, your son is going to ask you. There's 4 times when the Torah mentions about a child asking in the Torah. It's brought down in the book of Exodus. It's brought down in the book of Deuteronomy. 4 times, and each time it's with a different expression. So each time says what the Haggada is telling us is each time is for a different type of child. Why do we mention this by the Haggada? Because what do we want to say? We're just talking about how everyone has an obligation. Everyone includes the children as well. They're a different type of children. You say, this type of child, he doesn't really belong at the Seder. Actually, the Rebbe talks many times about the child that is not by the Seder. You have to remember him too. That's the 5th son. In the early 1960s, there was a group of individuals who were trying to collect signatures from rabbis, and the idea was that they should institute a concept that every Seder should have an empty chair. And what's the purpose for the empty chair? No. Not in this context. In this context, it was the empty chair was to remember someone that was lost during the Holocaust. Okay? You remember that? Yeah. So one of the rabbis that they came to was to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And they said, if we could get Chabad to sign on to this, imagine. Now Chabad has so many Seders, imagine that, how many people will be keeping this tradition. The Rebbe said, I like the idea, but I just have a bit of a twist to the idea. I think that the way we should go about it is not that there should be an empty chair by the Seder, but that everyone should have an empty chair that they fill by the Seder with someone who otherwise would not have been there. That's my take in this proposal. And so he says, there's 4 children mentioned here. What about the 5th child, the one that's not by the Seder at all? We have to remember that one as well. Who are the 4 children? There's the wise one, the wicked one, the simpleton, and the one that does not know how to ask. I'm not going to go into detail with that now, but just so that we know that these are the different children that we say in the Haggada that every single one is included. So when we're talking about the Haggada, we have to know everyone is included. Now, the Talmud tells us that when we say the Haggada, we have to begin with the embarrassing aspects of our history, and then that should morph into the more happier times of our history. Because again, what are we talking about? Experiencing Exodus from Egypt, and in order to experience the Exodus of Egypt, we have to know also about our slavery. A couple of years ago, probably it was 25 years ago, something like that.
For us, it's a couple.
I spent Pesach in Romania. I had a few Pesachs that I spent in different cities. I was once in Russia. I did a Pesach in Russia. I did a Pesach in Latvia, Romania, and once in Germany. In Romania, we were in a city called Iași, which I think today has a Chabad rabbi. At the time, it didn't. And we were going to conduct 2 Seders. The first Seder was with the community, who were mostly from the former Soviet Union. Many of them spoke Russian or Romanian. It was a big Seder. We had a big room. It was probably about 150 people there. It was great because I conducted the Seder, and I didn't speak their language. They didn't speak my language, but somehow we conducted the Seder. But I had a translator. I knew enough Russian that if the translator was not translating properly, I was able to correct her. But I couldn't speak it enough myself. But then we also had a second Seder, and that was with a group of Israeli medical students. They have a medical, some sort of like a university that Israelis go to get their medical degree. And so there are a bunch of Israeli medical students, probably about, 15, 20 of them. And we were going to have our Seder with them afterwards. So we brought our food. They were Sephardi mostly. They had rice and stuff on the table, but we said, well, we're going to eat our food and just, we'll leave that there. And so we went and we did the Seder with the community. When we came into the Seder, which we were having with the students, a scene unfolded before our eyes that we did not expect. These guys probably drank more wine and probably a lot of other things aside for wine that were consumed that night. These guys were over the table, under the table. There's like there wasn't even a Seder to start, we tried to have somewhat of a Seder with them. Like you say, have a little farbrengen with them. We tried to quickly catch up to where they were. A few cups of wine was not going to get me to where they were, but it was quite an elevated experience, let's just say. But I learned that you have different types of seders, and people celebrate seders in different ways. And for some it was like community, a nice calm seder, and for some it's a different type of seder. But everyone comes to Passover; everyone is part of it, and this is what the message here. We want to make it clear that the seder is to include everyone. Everyone is part of the seder. Now, as I said, that we're supposed to go back to the very beginning of our history and then sort of morph into the Exodus of Egypt. And so that's why whoever is the author of the Haggada says as follows. Turn to page 31, the very last paragraph. Blessed be he who keeps his promise to Israel. Blessed be he for the whole, and blessed be he calculated the end of bondage, in order to do as he had said to our father Abraham, that the covenant between portions had said. He said to Abraham, you should know that your seed will be strangers in the land of their heirs, and they will enslave them and make them suffer for 400 years. But I shall also judge a nation in whom they shall serve, and that they will come out with great wealth. So what are we essentially saying? We're essentially saying that it was all in the plan. It wasn't that they were slaves and God saved us. It was all in the plan. It was all meant to be. And that takes us into the next paragraph, which is one of the most famous paragraphs of the Haggada, which is page 32. This is what stood by our fathers for us, for not only one alone has risen against us to destroy us, but in every generation they rise against us to destroy us, and the whole blessed be saves us from their hand. Why is this important? Because not just to tell us history, but remember, what is the point of the Seder? The point of the Seder is to tell us that no matter how we're experiencing Pesach, there is also freedom. And in order to feel that freedom, we have to know that God promised the freedom. So God promised Abraham He's going to redeem them. God promised us He's going to redeem them. And how do we know? Because in every generation, there are those that stand up against us, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matzaleinu Miyadam, God saves us from their hand. So if there is an Ayatollah Khamenei who stands up and says, I want to wipe off Israel from the face of the map, from the face of the earth, God says, no, it's not going to happen. Because this year also we experience freedom, just like every other year. Now, I'm just going to show you just general. I'm not going to read through all the next part. But as I said, that we're supposed to go back to the very beginning of our story and then morph into the Exodus of Egypt. And part of that is going back to all the way, we talked about Abraham, and then Abraham, who had his children, Isaac and Jacob. And Jacob also had his form of slavery as well. And where was that? Because he was by his uncle Lavan, which was also a form of slavery. Now, you see over here that there are bold, on page 32, you see that there are bold words. The next few pages, 32, 33, 34, 35. I'm not going to read through this, but what I'm going to explain to you is like this. The bold quotes come from a verse in the Torah. Where is it? Where do we find the story? What's the story? Let's only read the bold parts. The Aramean wished to destroy my father, it's referring to Jacob, and he went down to Egypt, sojourned there, few in number, and he became there a nation, great, mighty, and numerous. And then we break down this verse. Went down to Egypt, he sojourned there, few in number. We break down the verse and we go back. Now take a look at the next page. The Egyptians treated us badly, and they made us suffer, and they put hard work upon us. Then we break down that verse. You see how that's done? The Egyptians treated us badly, they made us suffer, they put hard work. You see how that's broken down, and then we explain it? You following me what I'm telling you? Then we have another verse in bold. And we cried out to God, the God of our fathers, and God heard our voice, and he saw our suffering, our labors, and our oppression. Then we break down that verse. Page 34, we break that down. You see, we're breaking that down into paragraphs. Then the next one, God took us out of Egypt with a strong hand and outstretched arm and with great manifestation and with signs and wonders. Now we're breaking down that verse. You following what I'm telling you? You understand? So where are these verses from? So it's interesting that these verses actually come from the book of Deuteronomy. And it's a prayer that said something that has nothing to do with Passover actually at all. It's a prayer that said when you finish bringing your tithing, you're supposed to split up your tithing into 6 years of tithing. Then the seventh year is Shemitah, the day of rest, a year of rest. You're supposed to break that up, and each year is supposed to bring a different amount of tithing. When you're done bringing your tithing, on the third year and on the sixth year, you're supposed to give thanks to God for the blessings that God gave you. When you come on the holiday of Shavuot, it's actually the holiday of Shavuot, it's not the holiday of Passover. And when you do this, you say these verses. Want to give thanks to God. Lavan, our grandfather, he was with our forefather Jacob. Then we went down to Egypt, and then God saved us, and then etc., etc. And so what we're doing now is we're taking these verses, which essentially is only 4 verses, and we break them down. So now you want to know, why is the Haggada so long? Because we took 4 verses and we broke them down into 20 paragraphs. How many paragraphs is this? But it's really only 4 verses. See what I'm telling you? So this is really why the Haggada is long. Because we take 4 verses and we turn it into 20 paragraphs. Or more than that. But if you break it down, if you want to know, if you want to say, what is the minimum I have to say by the Seder, if you just say those 4 verses without going into the detail, you could still fulfill your mitzvah. So I'm not suggesting that that's all you should say. You should say the whole thing, and I'm not going to read them now as well. I just want to get through the last few points of the Haggada, which is, when we talk about God took us out, and we talk about a strong hand and outstretched arm, and with signs and wonders. Now we say, what are these signs and wonders? So we say those are the 10 plagues. So the 10 plagues are on page 36. Now what is the custom with the 10 plagues that we pour out? Take a look in page 35, that's the fine print. It says, by saying each of the following 3 wonders, blood, fire, pillars of smoke, spill a drop of wine from the cup into a broken dish. Do not remove wine by dipping in the finger. by spilling the cup itself. So there's different customs. This is the Chabad custom. And then we again spill by the 10 plagues. Why are we spilling wine? Why are we spilling wine?
You said wine was freedom, so.
Right?
I guess I don't know beyond that.
Right. So wine, okay, which also is it's red wine, and red is associated with judgment. Right? Now the idea is that on the night of the Seder we want to take the judgment and we want to sweeten the judgments. So when we're spilling out the wine, we're saying the wine that we're spilling out is the wine of judgment. That's the plagues, right? The wine of the plagues, we want to spill that out. But what we leave inside, we don't actually spill out the rest. You don't want to spill out the rest, because what happens is, according to Kaballa, that when you are taking the wine that's in the cup, when we got rid of the judgment, whatever is left there, when you're adding that wine, that is called yayin hamisameach, wine of celebration, wine of joy. Because wine has ability to go either way. Wine could take people in really bad places, and it could take people to really good places. So we want to spill out the wine of the judgment, which is called gevura, and then we want to refill it with wine which is now called yayin hamisameach, wine of rejoicing. So that is the Kabbalistic explanation to the spilling of the wine. All right, so I gave you a little more Kabbalah there. Now, what?
Do you make the blessings on Passover using white wine, or it has to be red wine?
You could, but it's preferred to use red. I know what you're asking about. I know which one you want. But you know there's a red version of that wine. There's a red version. It's called Malvasia. That's called Moscato. It's called. If you really only like white wine, then you could use white wine. But it is preferred to use red for these reasons, because there's some will say the red represents the blood, whatever. Okay, just a few more things. Imagine if I was giving a class on the Haggada by the night of Passover. Everyone would be already out sleeping by then. Then the next few paragraphs we go through how many makkahs actually each one are, and we come to a calculation that each of the plagues are actually really much more. And then we give thanks to God, and that's the idea of Dayenu. What's Dayenu? Dayenu, look on page 37. Dayenu is, if he brought us out of Egypt and Ayah carried out their judgments against us, Dayenu would have sufficed. Carried out the judgments against them and not against their idols, Dayenu would have sufficed. We go through each thing and say, everything that God does is Dayenu, it's enough. And then in page 38 in the bottom we say, how much more so that he did all these things, and we go through them, thanking God for all the things that he did, all the way until building us to building us the Beis Habchir, to building us the chosen house, the house of the Beis Hamikdash. But the song of Dayenu is just that. Dayenu is saying, even if we only have this miracle, it would have been enough, because we have to thank God for the miracles that happen. Okay, page 39. I'm just trying to go through a few more points because I know we're late. This is very important. After we go through the story of the Haggada, we're reminded about what's on the table. Rabbi Gamliel used to say, whoever does not discuss the following three things on Pesach has not fulfilled his duty. Pesach, matzah, maror. Okay, so according to him, you must say these things. Pesach, matzah, maror. That's why by my Seder, I try and get everyone to say it loud. Pesach, matzah, maror. Then we say the Pesach lamb. We go into detail what it is, the Pesach lamb. Why do we eat the Pesach lamb? Why do we eat the matzah? And why do we eat the maror? The matzah we read already, because there was no time for the dough to rise. The maror, because maror means bitter, and they embittered our lives in Egypt. And then, page 40, we say, in every generation, a person is obligated to regard himself as if he has come out of Egypt. As it says, V'yigadta levincha b'yemahu leimar, You shall tell your child in that day, it is because of this that God acted for me when I left Egypt. So it's not only them, but us too. We also have our exodus from Egypt. And therefore, we have to thank God for all the miracles. And now we say the first two paragraphs of Hallel. The other paragraphs of Hallel are recited later. And then once we recite the paragraphs of Hallel, we then say a blessing, asking God to bring us back, and that we should once again be able to celebrate in our holy temple the Seder, and we make a blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem, Gal Yisrael. Thank you, God, who redeemed Israel. And then we make a blessing, Hagafen, and that is the second cup of wine. And that gets us through half of the Seder. But this is really what the Haggada is about. This is the breakdown of what the Haggada is and some of the deeper aspects of what the Haggada is. It would have been nice, I could have really given a class on each of these paragraphs, but obviously we don't have that time. So we'll have to keep it at that. Any questions? No? Is that because everyone understands or because no one understands? I guess we have a lot of questions to ask when it comes Passover night, right? Okay, I'm going to end this recording. Thank you.